as I'm trying to increase the frequency of my videos at the moment, I've been thinking about what I use to record videos like this, which is currently a webcam, a Logitech 922. And as you may have seen from some of my recent videos, its performance when it comes to video and audio sync has been a little bit annoying, and I'm not even convinced how supported it is these days. So I started thinking towards what the alternatives are, and I'm sure that this will not be rocket science for many of you, but I've just never looked into this in detail in the current era, if you like. And I discovered that my existing SLR is not rigged for creating videos at all because it's ancient, it's more than 10 years old. Still a perfectly good camera, but not for this. So I started doing a little bit of research and I started scouting around the house to see what I had already. What I came up with was this, which is off the top of a selfie stick. I have no idea why I have selfie sticks, but I do. We've also got them at some point. And as you can see, that will extend to fit a mobile, because when I did my research, it was apparent that getting an SLR that could do decent video was going to cost me several £100, even second hand. And right now, that seems like a lot of money, because, it's a crunchy sort of time for money, as I'm sure it is for everyone else. So, what were my alternatives? So I went around the house and decided I'd try and sort of MacGyver something. So here we have a tripod, and this is what the webcam often sits on top of when I'm doing my retro toy videos on the table to my right. So these two are compatible because there's a perfectly standard thread. Stick those together, and that works fine up until a point. But I felt I needed something more, because what this little thing doesn't let me do is mount anything else on top of it, and lighting is always an issue for me. And right now I've actually got a couple of light sources here, which is unusual for me because, again, I typically just recycle something that was left over from equipment that my son had. So none of it was dedicated with this in mind, but this struck me as being the budget way to go. So I spent under £50 on two things to date, one of which was an Arnecock. And this was a grip for the my mobile phone, just an A53, nothing snazzy, but it is by far and away the best piece of camera apparatus that we all carry around with us these days, and saves you buying anything separate. And I was thinking back to my holidays. I thought, what do I take with me these days? And I thought, well, just my mobile, because that is my camera these days. So it is what it is. And I've also got this, which is an Ulanzi LED light. Now, when you combine these two, because the grip has a shoe adapter, you end up with something like this. And as you can see, that basically allows me to thread my phone through there, thusly, and gives me a great big light source on top without having to drain the phone's battery with its light, if it were even capable of doing that. And as you can see, this has got a lot of oomph to it. That's sort of approaching maximum, but it's a seriously bright light when it needs to be. So this wasn't expensive. It's got its own battery. It's rechargeable, USB-C. So for my purposes, it's absolutely spot on. Now, if I just switch this off, it'll just help with interference. The stand itself is nice because it's solid metal. It's got quite a lot of flexibility. As you can see there, that the base swivels, so you can attach that at 90 degrees if you need to. It's got a lock and unlock function here, so you can lift it up there, and then if you lock it back down again, then that's not going anywhere. There's no chance. It's absolutely rock solid once you've done that. And again, it's got a physical lock here, so if you click that in, you can then twist that 90 degrees, and you can lock it in again, and again, that's going nowhere fast. So this struck me as a very neat solution. There is a downside to it. The downside is that because this is metal, when I stick that onto this, which is a Joby tripod, this I originally got to do a little bit of wildlife filming, actually, because I figured that I could attach a GoPro to it and then put it in a sort of a claw attachment like that to go around a branch, and it actually worked really well. So once you do that with it, the branch runs through there, and then it just sticks on the branch. And with the GoPro, the weight doesn't bother it, but the weight of this, with the light on top and a mobile in it, is a bit much for something like this. So the one thing I will probably have to upgrade is my tripod. So a tripod with static legs will be a better bet, particularly if I want to move it around, which is kind of what I had in mind. In fact, when I've looked at more videos since, I've realised that although you see tripods like this being used in those videos, they're actually about double the height. So they're sort of, you can grip them on the bottom, but you still see these at the top. So those are obviously much bigger versions of the one that I've got. So that would require a little bit more spending. But what you end up with then is, a sort of a methodology for using your mobile as your filming tool, which of course you already have probably. So maybe I could end up spending about sort of £75, but it's still a damn sight cheaper than buying a whole new camera. And I also picked up another tip from watching various videos, which related to one of these. Now, this is just a USB-C on one end and a full-size USB port plug on the other end. But what this allows me to do, and I'd never really thought about this, and so it hadn't occurred to me at all. That will just slot into the bottom of your phone quite happily, and then you can put any USB-driven microphone into your phone and use that as your phone's mic. Now, the phone's audio, of course, isn't bad because it's a phone, but this is what I normally use. So I already had a mic that I could use to plug into my phone to use as a better audio source. So the only downside of this is that I don't, generally speaking, have a huge amount of storage space left on my phone. But if I uploaded everything to OneDrive, then cleared the phone, that I could probably get around that. I think it's got an SD card in it anyway. So that would allow you to take a reasonable amount of footage, particularly if, like me, you're generally in a sort of indoors setting. You can set all that up, and that's no problem. Now, the other nice thing about this light, by Ulanzi, by the way, if I didn't mention that already, is it has shoe fittings here, here, and here. So you can end up with a stack of lights or anything else. So you can put a microphone on top of this as well, and then feed the mic into the mobile whilst it's plugged in. So as a result, you end up with a lighting rig and a sound rig attached to your mobile phone, all of which obviously enhances the ability that the mobile already has in it for any given situation. So if you know what you're doing off the back of that, you end up with quite a nice bargain basement sort of vlogging tool that you can then use as a starting point, a sort of jumping off point for maybe getting a more advanced solution down the line when you feel ready for that. So this is what I'm going to try and go with. I'm probably going to might get a slightly better tripod, although despite what I've said about it sort of not taking the weight terribly well, if it's static and it's completely vertically mounted, it's actually okay because the centre of gravity is kind of directly spread around all 3 feet. It's only when you try and tilt it that it starts to just not be able to support the weight. But it's still, it's workable. It's workable. And as against something like a Canon M50, which is the sort of thing I was looking at, it's just vastly cheaper. So for someone like me who's doing it, partly as a hobby, partly as a sort of bridging towards, trying to do it a little bit more seriously, perhaps, this seems to be a really sort of good solution for the time being. It's only the weight of the mobile grip itself that's maybe a slight downside, but then I'd rather be confident that my primary phone isn't going to be constantly dropping out and breaking itself. That's the trade-off. If you get plastic ones, the odds are they will break more over time. So I'd rather have that, which gives me the upgrade options because it has the shoe fitting on top of it as well, and that just gives me more flexibility, I think. So in the description below you'll find links to the things that I've just bought and have obviously put hands on, and so know the quality of. When I've got more of a sort of rig together for it. So maybe if I do get a new tripod for it and so on, and maybe if I then take it out and actually try and do stuff with it, I can update you on how that's gone. There are other options. There are, I think they're DJI Osmos, they're called. And those are gimbaled, little gimbaled cameras that you can then take around. And they're quite discreet, they're quite small. They're not as expensive as a second-hand SLR, but to my mind, they're about the only sort of bridging solution there seems to be these days. Because I was thinking about camcorders, for example, because they used to be a thing. But I guess that the problem is that there's so much packed into phones these days. Why would you bother? Because the phones themselves obviously seem far more discreet than a camcorder would be. So, so I just thought I'd update you basically, because you will probably see a bit of a difference in quality now between obviously the webcam footage and the mobile footage. I will probably still use the webcam when I'm staying close to the PC for sort of smaller things. But if I fancy a change of scene, I will probably move to a different room. And that is, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because obviously using a mobile, I can free myself from this room and move around and go to different rooms in the house and just do what I need to do with it, basically. So hope that's been of vague interest if you're, sort of wondering what other options there are. It may be blindingly obvious to you, and if it is, then I do apologise. But to me, this is the first time I've really started thinking about this as a concept, so I just thought I'd share. Cheers for now.